Welcome. My name is Nazura and I am your host for Breakout Room 3. The next session is on Industry 4.0 and its value for Indonesia's medtech and pharma sectors. If you have any questions, please key into the Q&A button on your screen and we will attend to you shortly. Leading the discussion is Dr. Pushkar Pense, Pharma 4.0 Consulting Lead from TÜV Süd. As a quick introduction, Pushkar is a member of the Global Pharma 4.0 Working Group at the International Society for Pharmaceutical Engineering (ISPE) and is part of the Executive Council of ISPE's Singapore chapter. He has extensive experience in the life sciences sector, specializes in digital twins and advanced analytics, and has led multiple digital innovation projects across the biopharma value chain. Pushkar is joined by Pak Randi Kelana, Operations Manager, PT Kimia Pharma Sungun Pharmacopoeia, Andre Klaus, Product and Deployment Manager at Axtum, and Amit Samel, Technical Solutions Consultant, Life Sciences and Specialty Chemicals at Honeywell. And with that, I'm happy to hand proceedings to you, Pushkar. Perhaps you can begin with a few overarching remarks to set the context for the discussions, please.
Thank you very much, Nazura. I hope you can hear me well. This has been an excellent session so far, and I would like to welcome the participants as well as audience to this. I'm going to start with the Industry 4.0 transformation in your company. And the options were the usual suspects, the CEO, the CIO, the COO. But interestingly, majority of the participants chose the fourth option. And the fourth option was COVID-19. Jokes apart, but the reality is that when it comes to life sciences, pharma and medtech sectors have transformed more in last year or so than perhaps any other year before. They have responded to hugely increasing demands of certain medicines, medical devices, test kits, and have innovated along the way. And all this while facing challenges such as disrupted supply chains and workforce availability. When I talk to my friends and colleagues outside the life sciences value chain, I see a clear change there as well. Some of the terms that only we use, such as clinical trials, phase 1, phase 2, safety, efficacy, antigen testing, have become household words now. There's clear increase in understanding and awareness of these sectors amongst general public. Pharma and medtech sectors have clearly taken the center stage. Meanwhile, another change is happening, and speakers before me have spoken about that, and it is about exponential growth of technologies. And not just that, the convergence of these technologies is allowing us to achieve outcomes that were considered impossible even a few years back. This convergence is driving the fourth industrial revolution, and governments are recognizing the importance of this change. The government of Indonesia introduced a strategy called Making Indonesia 4.0 in 2018 to boost adoption of Industry 4.0. Just a few months back, they included pharma and medtech sectors in this strategic plan on a priority basis, realizing that these sectors are key to Indonesia's self-reliance in healthcare. It is against this backdrop that we have all assembled here to discuss Industry 4.0 and its value for Indonesia's medtech and pharma manufacturing sectors. And it is my absolute pleasure to moderate this excellent panel here. Let me quickly introduce the panelists. First, we have Mr. Randy Kelana. He's operations manager at Kimia Pharma. He has extensive experience in manufacturing operations, engineering, production planning, and he has also implemented some of the cutting-edge technologies in manufacturing. Welcome, Randy, and I'll try to tease out some information on those topics from you today. Next, we have Mr. Andre Klaus. His role at Arkstone essentially involves helping manufacturers embrace digital tools on factory floor. He has experience in process automation and digital strategy, and he has worked across sectors such as oil and gas, power generation, insurance, and medical devices. Welcome, Andre. I'm looking forward to hearing from you on your insights on digital transformation in medtech as well as other sectors. And we also have Mr. Amit Samel. Amit's role at Honeywell involves engaging the clients, understanding their problems, providing technology solutions, and guiding them along the journey. He has extensive experience in pharma and chemical sectors. Welcome, Amit.
Hello.
It would be great to hear from you about the transformation journey that manufacturers take.
Yeah.
So let's get started. My first question goes to Randy. Hi, Randy. So the first question is, we all know API manufacturing is a very competitive business, right? So what are some of the peculiar challenges API manufacturers face to remain competitive in this space? And what are the key drivers for you to explore new technologies?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Puskar. Let me begin from the kind of the product of pharmaceutical industry. They have several kinds of pharmaceutical product in pharmaceutical industry. One of that Mr. Puskar already told before is raw material. Raw material is very tight of the gross margin of the product. That's why there is very very good to us to make the COGS competitiveness. How do we make the COGS competitiveness by using Indy 4.0? By put the technology in our missions and then put what's going or running the process in the culture of the people. Maybe that is the beginning of our explanations.
Yeah, thanks, Randy. I think you brought a very important point on processes as well as people, along with the technologies that we use. Maybe we can talk about some of the implementations that you have done in your in your company later on. So next question is to Amit. So Amit, you must have seen companies have challenges. They know technologies can provide solutions. The indices such as Indy 4.0 that Randy just mentioned, or the Smart Industry Readiness Index, or the DPMM, can help them understand where they are. But how do they actually go about it in their journey?
Yeah, I mean the first point is as you rightly mentioned about the assessment, right? The Indy 4.0 assessment, or very specific. If you need a very specific assessment for sector, then we have the digital plant maturity model out by Bioforum. So the first point for any company to achieve is to understand ourselves, is to understand what is the culture within the company, where are we on the digital maturity journey. Are we at level 1 or are we already at level 2? And then what would be required to go and achieve the level 3 of that particular model? So for example, first thing is, if you do the assessment, you come to know we are at level 2. Now understand what are the challenges at level 2. What are the day-to-day problems? Where are you spending a lot of your manpower on, or where are you spending a lot of your energy on? Like for example, you are producing a batch of a product and you come to know that these are the 10 or 15 energy guzzlers who are being implemented in your facility, and they are contributing to the energy usage within your facility. So understand the challenges, right? Understand what are your internal challenges. And then the third part is to find an appropriate partner to implement them, a technology partner to implement them. So understand what that technology partner can offer all across the supply chain. Because right now you have understood 2 or 3 challenges yourself, but maybe the technology partner would also introduce further challenges which you are not aware of. So understand the experience of the technology partner, evaluate 2 or 3 technology partner, understand their entire portfolio and what these technology partners can do for you. And then the fourth part is come up with a small production pilot. Understand, take up one line within your production facility that you want to implement, wherein you see the current challenges and you want to implement some of the digital or digitalization initiatives, or industry 4.0 initiatives. So identify that line, and once you identify that particular production line where you can implement, and start with a small project. So start very small and make sure that you can easily scale up to a bigger scale, as and when you get returns of whatever you have implemented on the small part, right? So the first part is to implement some small project, see what are the returns you are getting, are you achieving your goals what you started with, and then come up with the next step and start scaling up the solution all across your manufacturing facility, and then on to your other parts of your value chain, right? So that is how we approach, that is how we talk to the clients and explain the whole journey, and then we assist them as the clients approach us, we assist them throughout the entire part.
Yeah, thanks for that, Amit. I mean, that's a
Yeah,
very important view on a structured approach, the
yeah,
five-step approach that you talked about, starting with the problem to piloting and scaling it up.
correct.
Uh, uh, I think a related question, maybe Andre, you can take this up. So, like Amit said, there are solutions available, there are problems to be solved, and then how do you really prioritize those solutions? So, you have a roadmap. How do you prioritize the initiatives that go in the roadmap, and then how do you create a business case for example, company executives and funding requirements?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think often the problem that companies face is they know they should be digitizing and embracing Industry 4.0, but they really don't know how to get started. And I think this is where prioritization is important, because it's impossible to do everything at once. So you really need to have a proper structure in place so you can prove small wins along the way, um, and expand from there. So the way I've typically done this with some of my medical device manufacturing clients is we first start with the digitization process, and what by that I mean anything that's captured on paper, we need to get it into a digital format, right? Because you need the data to be digitally first of all before you can even start talking about some of the Industry 4.0 advantages, right? So an example of a plan would be, okay, first you look at all the information that's being captured. How is that information used? How is it being currently captured on paper? And how can we emulate that process in a digital way so that we have that information available digitally in the database? So that would be step one. Step two, from there, once we have that data digitally, we can start working out, okay, what are the key insights that we want to draw from this data that we've collected, right? So what are the kind of key things that we want to monitor? Do we want to monitor quality control and audit processes, right? Who's checked what, which is of course very important in this space. Or do we want to monitor production inefficiencies, like when are things taking longer than they're supposed to? So once we have the data, all this becomes kind of just a question of what are the key kind of things that you want to optimize for, and the savings that you want to get from there. And once you're at that level, you're already starting to see returns from the exercise, right? Because all of a sudden you can really quickly identify these problems, or you can really quickly show an auditor who's done what checks and have that traceability in place. So there you're starting to get returns. And then the next level above that, you can start incorporating things like sensors. So you're automatically capturing some of this data directly from the machines. Or you might be implementing some kind of AI or machine learning tools to automatically predict some of the outcomes that you're looking at. So that kind of would be level 3 in my mind. And that's then maybe one way one could prioritize that.
Yeah, those are very important points. Thanks, Andre. A related question along to that, and Randy and Amit, please feel free to jump in. Is there are some tangible benefits definitely, but there are some intangible benefits as well, right? For example, if you have a predictive maintenance software, then your maintenance engineer can sleep peacefully at night. So, and Randy, perhaps you can sympathize with that. So, how do you consider these intangible benefits and when you are creating a business case?
You gave one good example, Pushkar. The other benefits, I mean, one of the use case which we implemented in some other country was that the client had a lot of logbooks, right? So the logbooks had to be maintained, and then he was using a physical logbook. So there were many equipments on his oral solid dosage manufacturing shop floor. Each equipment having its own logbook, right from a scoop, the steel scoop which you use for dispensing, till all the major equipments, compression machines, and all those things. Right. So those logbooks were physical logbooks, and the first step they decided was to digitize those logbooks. Right. Now, once you digitize those logbooks, the physical logbooks are no longer required. They are taken out, and these logbooks are holding quality critical data, right? So now these logbooks, initially physical logbooks, had to be stored in their document storage rooms. so that they main so for few years where that depends on the record retention time of the company. So now once you are off this physical logbooks, you need not even require that storage space, right? So this is this was one of the benefit, right? You don't require that storage space. You are off. You are completely digitalize your entire logbook function. So these are some of the benefits you get offline. So you no longer require to keep a tab of how many physical logbooks you had, which is the logbook which is issued right now, which is the logbook which is now superseded. So no more monitoring, no nothing. It's all digitalized. The data is on the servers, and then you can keep a record. You can log into the servers and check what are the record, which is the current logbook, which has been superseded, and all. Also, everything is digitized, and that helps a lot, right? So this is a very small example, and normally I have seen pharma companies. They are quite apprehensive at first that how would digitalization be beneficial for them. And this is the first approach we tell them, that why don't you start with digitizing a logbook, and that too for maybe one or two logbooks within your shop floor, right? Don't start with the one or two logbooks. Give a small workstation for the operator to enter the data, or give a tab for the operator to enter the data, and start with these one or two machines which are not very critical machines, right? Start there, get familiarized with the digital transformation, and get familiarized with the technology, and then slowly try to implement it elsewhere, right? So
Yeah,
this is how it
that's a
goes. Yeah,
that
yeah,
was a very interesting example, Amit, because I remember early part of my career. I remember going to the records room, looking at
exactly.
papers sitting there, having to scan through them during audits. It's a painful experience.
Correct, correct.
Randy, do you want to add into this topic from your experience in from operations?
Right, right. Uh, I think the digitalizations more make more easy to us. I mean, the people in our side is not very stressful doing his production or something like maintaining or another activity in our productions. Uh, in my experience, right, we start from administration's digitalizations, right? We make paperless documentations, right? That Mr. Amit told before. Just that.
Yeah, that's thanks for that. So Randy, I'm getting some echo. So Randy, you also mentioned that you have used IoT technologies uh, in your operations. Would you be able to elaborate on some of the use cases, how you went about them, uh, and sort of took them to the logical conclusion?
Okay, let me start not from IoT. Let me start from ERP. My company experience in how to develop ERP. Why we put ERP in our priority is because of we look in our country in Indonesia. Let's say we have we call bonded zone policy. Bonded zone is when you export to another country, you have several advantages for tax. That's why that is very good to us as our company to grab that advantages policy by using ERP. At the end, our inventory control, let's say, our inventory control is controlled by or checking or monitoring by custom. Uh, uh, at the beginning, we start from ERP, and then we make web-based monitoring. That's we give to custom to look our ERP systems. Now it's already running, and then very helpful to us to have the advantages of tax. That is the beginning. The other thing is our company is a very beginning company, start from 2018, and then until now still running the productions within two years or 3 years. We do some of IoT. Let's say, pharmaceutical company is very strict policy inside, right? First, we do Internet of Things for purified water system. The other things is we should control consumptions of energy in our site. We also doing Internet of Things for electric consumptions at the beginning. And the other thing is because of our raw material is using solvents is flammable. Because of that, we use gas monitoring IoT for our system to control smoothly for our factory. That's it, Mr. Puskar.
Yeah, thanks for that, Randy. I mean, the two use cases, the use cases you talked about essentially around the cost improvement as well as safety are very interesting. So the other thing that you had mentioned earlier was about ERP, and was that were you referring to traceability of medicines and from serialization perspective, or that was only for custom purposes?
No, this is for not only for custom because me is a part of subsidiary of Kimia Pharma. Kimia Pharma is the what we call the original company is finished product manufacturing. Kimia Pharma want to put higher to grab the API company in Indonesia. ERP at the beginning is mandatory for Kimia Pharma. I mean, all subsidiaries is handled for doing ERP and then controlled by holding company. That's it, Mr. Puskar.
Okay, understand. Thank you very much. So, Randy spoke about some of the use cases targeting some of the KPIs. I think one other KPIs that I also briefly mentioned is the traceability for pharma companies, and especially coming to Indonesia. I think, Amit, if I'm not wrong, they implemented the regulation in 2017 for serialization. So, for this purpose or for other purposes, for other KPIs that pharma manufacturers are targeting, could you elaborate how digital technologies can help? Amit, the question is to you, or Andre, you can also pitch in from your experience in medical devices.
Yeah, so
I can give one example first, and then Amit, you can take it from there. So I think in my typical the easiest way to trace production is essentially complementing your activity on the shop floor with things like digital barcodes or RFIDs or things like that. So that's the easiest way, right? Because once you have that established, then the operators on the shop floor don't need to think anymore. They can just scan. It's immediately traceable from that ID what particular component or what particular raw material was used, and you can trace that all along the production process. And then as you go step by step through that production process, you can complement that with additional checks, and all that checks get related back to that particular item with a barcode or digital ID, so that you can easily look up. So for example, you might have a comprehensive quality check that you need someone to fill out. You need a second person to verify that all the values are within certain parameters. All of that forms part of a very important audit trail, right? Because if anything goes wrong down the line, you need to be able to trace that back. So if you have a digital ID associated with whatever equipment you're producing or with whatever medicine you're producing, basically all you need to do is scan that at every step along the way. And if you need to retrieve any of that information, you can use that digital ID to basically look up a complete audit history. So that's the typical approach that we would use in terms of serialization and providing that digital audit trail about what's happening in the manufacturing process.
Yeah, very interesting example, Andre. Amit, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, another use case or another example where we are closely working with one of the glove manufacturing company in Southeast Asia. So what is happening is gloves are actually continuously manufactured. So there is a conveyor line where the hand formers are moving on the conveyor line, and then they are dipped into different tanks of latex, of acids. So in fact, what the challenge which they're facing was that along the glove manufacturing line, if they find they do take samples after every 1 hour, right? And then once they take sample, they find that, oh, these bunch of gloves have a small pinhole in the glove, or the uniformity is not there. So those samples go to the lab, they come back, and then they find that there are some issues. By that time, for till the results come out, by that time there are lots and lots of gloves which are passed on the conveyor belt, and then the entire batch has to be recovered because that was a fault in that entire batch. But then they have to sell that batch at a much lower price, right?
Mhm.
Because the quality is not there. So this issue they had. So there was a lag between knowing about the quality of the gloves which are coming out and then taking an action. By that time, there are a lot of gloves which are manufactured. So right now they are working with us to how to give a predictive analysis. Even before the quality is going down, what are the parameters within that glove manufacturing line which they have to monitor? And then from that monitoring of the parameter, what can be achieved, what kind of predictive insights can be achieved, so that they take action beforehand. Suppose the washing, the acid which is used for washing the former, the concentration has gone low. They come to know after a delayed time. So right now, if the concentration has gone low, we would like to measure the sensors. From the sensors, get that data, find out the concentration is going low, so that an action is taken beforehand, even before any kind of flaw or any kind of problems are detected in that gloves, right? So we are taking actions beforehand, even before. So that's a part of a predictive analysis software which we are implementing, collecting data from different sensors, collecting data from lab equipments as well, because that data is also useful, and then generating certain insights back to the operator on the shop floor with small screens on the shop floor showing that this may happen if you don't take any action, right? So that saves a lot of money for them, not only for one batch, for many batches for years to come, right? They don't need to sell the batch at a much lower price. They can achieve the same quality, consistent quality all across the batch. So this is just an example. So we are doing a pilot with this. So we have identified one line and we are just carrying out a small pilot with them.
Very interesting example, Amit. That actually the predictive analytics portion you mentioned. I would like to take this opportunity to go back to Randy. So Randy, you mentioned about the use of IoT in to monitor energy consumption. So are you also using predictive analytics for that? Could you please elaborate on that? Because energy consumption is important not just from cost perspective, but it is also from the sustainability perspective. It is very important for the companies. So, Randy.
For me, Indie 4.0 is a journey. Our company is our beginning start from 2018, which means now we are still under develops our OEE systems for productivity. One of the base fundamental system is electric or energy consumption monitoring. For me, this is the beginning, but for the next years, maybe we will start to doing the predictive maintenance process for IoT. That's it, Mr. Puskar.
Very good. Thanks, Randy. So the next question I'm going to ask is for Andre. Uh, so Andre, you have extensively worked in oil and gas, in even in insurance sectors and chemical sectors. So from your experience, where are we in life sciences, both pharma and medical devices, compared to other industries in terms of embracing these technologies?
Okay, good question. I think what immediately springs to mind as the key challenge in this industry is compliance, right? So obviously other sectors, oil and gas is actually strangely a little bit similar. They also have very strict kind of regulation and compliance um, uh, issues that they need to be wary of. But other industries, of course, if something goes wrong, the the consequence is not as big as in this industry. So of course we're the biggest difference I found is the need for very rigorous compliance checks and being adherent to various regulations. So at the moment, like for our digital tools, for example, we need to be compliant with certain FDA regulations on digital signatures, for example. So that's a very important factor, and there's a lot of effort that needs to go in to make sure you're compliant. However, once you are compliant, I think the solutions that digital tools can offer are actually even more useful, because going back to that traceability problem that we've talked about earlier, that's of course more important when we're talking about an industry where compliance and audits are part and parcel. So the digital tools, while it's a little bit more challenging to make sure that you tick all the boxes in terms of being compliant, they actually have a lot of benefit in being able to prove that compliance later on down the track and being able to generate those audit trails we mentioned previously. So I think that will be the biggest difference that I guess springs to mind. So a little bit more challenging in implementation, but there's also a lot of potential in this industry for digitization and Industry 4.0.
Right, that's a very good point. I think compliance is always that's one thing that tends to hold back pharma companies. Randy, this is something for you. Coming from manufacturing operations, do you get a pushback from, let's say, your quality or regulatory affairs departments on when you're trying to implement advanced technologies or digitalizing your workflows?
Right. We should explain more to the quality. This is comply with, let's say we cannot talk, this is GMP, what good manufacturing practice, but this is good automatic manufacturing practice, right? I mean, when you when you are talk about Indie 4.0, that is very related to good automatic manufacturing practice. That should be understand to all stakeholder in our company, right? And then explain one by one about that. But in my experience, as long as this is data integrity is good, and then validations is good, I think we can run that system. This is my experience.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point because I worked in manufacturing settings earlier, and we used to. I have experienced these pushbacks very often. Just about explaining, it's a painful effort, but eventually it works out. Amit, so you have experience in both specialty chemicals and pharma, and especially specialty chemicals and small molecule APIs are like cousins. The processes are very similar. Then do you see difference in approach of these two industries in digitalization from your experience? Is it a stark difference?
I mean, again, I'll come back to the compliance point, right? So the only only difference is the compliance. I mean, even though the production team or the IT team or the automation team is ready to implement something, the quality team should give a big yes before implementing or touching any quality critical system. So, and that, I mean, and I agree with the quality team as well. They
Okay,
need to
thanks.
know what are the risks in implementing such a solution, and they need to know that whether the solution is proven or not somewhere. So I don't blame the quality team. That is their job to do a
Right.
detailed review and then, there's no issue about that. It's just that how do we convince them, what kind of strong use cases we show it to them, how do we do the risk assessment, how do we prove that this is not going to have any adverse impact on the product quality and hence the patient safety. That's the most important thing, right? So let's convince them. They are not road showstoppers, but let's convince them and then move ahead.
Yeah, I think one trick of the trade is to get the head of the quality and make him the sponsor of your project. So, uh, so, so apart from compliance, obviously everybody knows compliance. That's a roadblock. But apart from that, are there any other roadblocks, or are there any other bottlenecks in Industry 4.0 transformation? Be it skills or be it processes. What are your thoughts on that? Let's start with Randy first. Randy, what do you think about availability of appropriate skills to implement digitalization? In
Sorry. I cannot hear you. Sorry.
So, how skilled the workforce is, do you think, to adopt digital technologies? So, do they have enough skills to implement advanced technologies and sustain them?
I think nowadays we don't have a choice for doing Indie 4.0. I think uh, for make the competitiveness. Let's say me is a raw material company. I think the competitive company is not competitive company to company, but let's say company in Indonesia, in company let's say in India or in China. I think the the must for us for doing Indie 4.0.
Yeah, I understand. So, Andre, same question to you. When you talk to your clients, do you see like concrete gaps in skills to implement and even sustain the technologies that you implement,
Yeah, I think
or things are improving?
yeah, I mean, I think this is a common theme. I think some of the larger organizations, they will have maybe an internal IT team that will champion sometimes some of these digital rollouts. So sometimes that helps kind of bridge the gap. But I think there's a lot of that there is an issue with some smaller SMEs where people don't have the necessary training to get started, and there is definitely a need for some guidance there. And it's not it's I think there's also an issue with understanding the concrete benefit, right? So sometimes people hear about digitization, but the feeling might be that they don't really understand why they should be on board. They've been operating a certain way and it's worked for them. What's the real incentive to change? So I think that is part of the education gap as well, like understanding like what the benefits might be and how the production processes can improve through digitization, not just focus on the problem of digitization itself. So that's probably an area where some more education can help.
Right, that's a good point, because that is something that I have also encountered with my clients. So they have a technology roadmap. They're planning to do many things over next 3, 4, 5 years, but they're not sure about whether they will be able to sustain, or they will be able. I mean, those things will be actually practically used and taken advantage of. So Amit, apart from the skills gap that we talked about, are there any other roadblocks that you see in implementing digital technologies?
I mean, as of now, not major road gaps, but again, coming back to the skills, right? I mean, skill is compliance skills. So skills at two levels: skills at the technical level to implement the product, and the skills at a user level as well, right? The end user should also know how to use the product. What should I do if something goes wrong? So the support structure, the skill set of the user, these all are very important things. And then one of the solution for this problem would be to give a kind of a platform, offline platform, for that particular user team to use it, and then only implement the product online. So offline platform will be any instance on a cloud, right? So you generate an instance on a cloud. Let the production team, let the user team get very familiar with the product. So they are happy. They go through all the teething problems offline, and then see the same product be implemented online, and then get and start using that product. So there are ways. Once the company itself can understand what are the challenges, what are the potential benefits which will come after 2 3 4 years after implementing this initiative, we can overcome those challenges. That's not an issue. Culture of the company, the training. So it's more of providing support, hand holding the company, training that those particular user teams, and then implement those products and achieve slowly, step by step, achieve your digital transformation. So you, for this you require a good partner who can understand the current status, who can understand the current levels of the current culture of the company. What are the people, how are the people working, what is their background? So he can come up with good solutions for the company to implement digital transformation and ultimately increase their value and increase their business.
Yeah, very important point, Samit. So we recently worked with a manufacturer on developing a skills roadmap for them, and
Yep.
the roadmap, the deliverable were exactly the same. It was running. It is expected to run in parallel with the technology roadmap. So as the technology roadmap moves, your skill roadmap also moves.
Correct. Correct.
Uh, so the next topic I want to talk about briefly is perhaps the white elephant in the room, the cybersecurity issue. For especially for pharma. So we know, so what happened with a major US pharma company a couple of years back, and how much they suffered because of a cyber attack. And given where we are in and how important pharma and life sciences companies are in COVID-19 and tackling the COVID-19 crisis, they are major targets. Any comments on that? I'll maybe start with Andre first.
Um, yeah, so I mean, cybersecurity is, of course, whenever we move to digitization, cybersecurity has to be a consideration. And it's not just prevention of cyber attacks, but it's also on keeping the audit trail integrity in place, right? You don't want someone to be able to kind of go back into the system and edit something that they shouldn't have, right? Because that audit trail is paramount in this space. So I think, I mean, from our perspective, when we design our products, we kind of always design ground up with cybersecurity in mind. So making sure we use technologies such as encryption and make sure that the audit trails are locked appropriately so they cannot be edited. So I think it's an important consideration, but it's also a bit of a, it's also probably not the first thing a company might be thinking about when they're digitizing. So it's important to kind of keep that in the back of your mind when you're thinking about a problem where a digital solution will help you. You're not really thinking usually about, okay, but what about cybersecurity? So that's why it's an important topic to kind of bring up, to consider that when you're looking at your solutions or how you're going to tackle that particular problem. Is it actually going to be safe from a cybersecurity perspective? So I think the importance comes from two parts. First of all, whatever solutions, you need to have the cybersecurity in place. But as a company investing in Industry 4.0, that should always be in the back of your mind. Yeah, that would be my 2 cents on that one.
Yeah, thanks, Andre. Amit, do you want to add something to that?
I mean, yeah, cybersecurity definitely is important as more and more data has been exposed. It's paramount to cover that data to ensure that it is all secured, right? And then again, looking at the again, we came to the topic of technical gaps, right? Understanding of the network, understanding of cybersecurity. So that is also very important, and that has to be improved, right? I mean, I've done assessments of some of the companies, especially pharma companies, and then I've seen that inside their company they have access control systems, CCTV systems, building management systems, all connected to a single switch, a very flat network, right? If that switch is down, all these networks are down. If that switch is hacked, all these networks, you can spread and propagate whatever you want all through all these networks, right? So, and then when we talk, there's a gap over there, right? There's a know-how gap, uh, that how this network was designed, was security considered when you design such kind of networks. We have very flat structures, so that kind of technical know-how has to be there's a gap, there's a gap. So even before implementing any solution, we should look at the current cybersecurity posture, try to find out what are the gaps over there, how they can improve over there, and then come up with all the solutions, right? So that's a very basic step, and without that, I mean, that has to be done before embarking on this journey, right? And then because I mean, as long as nothing happens, it's good. But if something happens, it just takes down the whole network and all the operations. Whatever you implement, ERPs and all, you once you see the screen with Bitcoin required, that's it. You're gone. You can't do anything. You have to format your computer, format your drives. So again, what Andre was telling, right? You need to have all the backups in place. So it's not only cybersecurity. You need to have your image backups in place. You need to have your quality critical data backups in place, so that even if you are getting attacked, you can recover fast, right? So all that has to be considered even before you embark on a digital transformation journey, and that's paramount important.
Yeah, that's very important. So it's not just about security in the strictest sense; it's also about the resilience
Yes, yes,
organization.
yes.
Randy, do you want to do you want to talk about perhaps your experience with this during your ERP implementation? Yeah, go ahead.
Pharma data integrity is everything. Data integrity is everything, and then data should be secure, right? Secure should be not should not cannot change, right? Cannot change, and then let's say cannot erase, and then cannot uh, extend to another part, let's say. I think data should be secure. That's why security is very important for this roadmap for Indie 4.0.
Yeah, thanks for that, Randy. So we are coming to the close of this session. So what I'm going to do now is to request the panelists for their concluding remarks. There are two things you can do. You can choose one of them, or you can also respond to two questions. So to both the questions. The one question is, what is that one take-home message you want the audience to leave with today? And the second question would be, imagine if you are in a similar panel, in the same panel 5 years down the line, what is one uh, technology success story you would be enthusiastically talking about? Let's start with Amit for this. So one question is the take-home message, and second question is, in a futuristic scenario, what is that one success story you would be talking about?
So the take-home message again, I'll fall back to cybersecurity. Ensure your data is secured, right? That's the take-home message. First of all, whatever you are going on a journey or not on a journey, right now look at your networks. Ensure that all the networks are safe, secured, so that you don't get any downtime in the future. And then coming back to your next question about 5 years down the line, 5 years down the line, I would like to talk about use cases where people have implemented predictive analytics, and those analytics are reaping benefits, and they are seeing drastic change in their productivity improvement. So that is what I would like to present and talk with the panelists and the people around.
Excellent. Thanks, Amit. Randy, do you want to go next?
Uh, Take home message. I think the very important for Indie 4.0, the journey of Indie 4.0 is about the people. Uh, I think we should change the mindset of people to look at our future in Indie 4.0. That's right, Andre said before that that have several advantages for doing Indie 4.0. Maybe we start from that kind of step for making understanding to our people in company. I think I can answer only one question. Is it okay?
That's okay. Absolutely fine. Yeah, but that absolutely fine. Yeah, but you bring up a very good point. So it has to be Indie 4.0, the Industry 4.0 transformation. It has to be people centric, and that also comes from Klaus Schwab when he writes in his the original book on Fourth Industrial Revolution. A very important point. Thanks, Randy. Over to you, Andre, for your response to one or both of these questions.
I think for the question on what I'd like to see in 5 years is, at the moment we're talking about a lot of Industry 4.0 solutions within one facility, but I think in 5 years' time it'll be good to like extend that outwards and like integrate different related facilities maybe across a supply chain, and have a much more interconnected network. So that's something that I think is just starting, and look forward to see more of that. In terms of the take-home message, I think the biggest thing is, as Randy mentioned earlier, Industry 4.0 is a journey. It's not something where you flick a switch and then you're Industry 4.0 compliant. So I think it just is, the way to tackle it is piece by piece. Identify a problem that you need to solve that first, and then build on that solution.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Andre. So we are at the close of the session. Let me quickly summarize what we discussed. So completely agree, it's Industry 4.0 or Indie 4.0. It's a journey. It's not a destination. You are not, it's a North Star. You're going to be slowly moving towards that. It has to be people-centric, and cybersecurity is a key consideration. You can't go where you want to without building that security and resilience, hard baking that security and resilience. Thank you very much, Randy, Amit, and Andre, for participating in this excellent panel discussion. And if there are any questions from the audience, we'd be happy to take them. If not, then over to you, Nazura.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of Voice of the Market, Indonesia's Industry 4.0 Forum. This session is recorded and will be shared on our platform, so do feel free to rewatch it again at your own leisure. Thank you again for your support, and see you at ITAP 2031.